What up, Screen Fiends? I'm GB, and you're tuned in to Screenheads TV, where we like to discuss all the wonderful things appearing on your movie and your TV screens. This episode is going to be part 2 in my explanation of the Cowboy from Preacher, aka the Saint of Killers. Alright, so this is part 2 of my attempt to explain the Saint of Killers. Now, the part 1 of the video, which if you haven't watched that first, you should probably watch that one first, was really all about his backstory, a lot of the stuff we saw on the show already, just explaining it a little more in detail, as well as how he became the Saint of Killers, which we don't really see on the show. They may show us that. They may decide to not show us. So there are some spoilers to the show if you're not up to date, and there are possible spoilers for what's to come in the show, but I do my best to try and not really put out the major spoilers. And I try to just keep it really just about the character himself and not so much about his actions, because I don't want to spoil anything that they may handle on the show. The point of the video is really just to get you guys a little bit more acquainted with him and maybe to hopefully understand him a little bit more and who he is and what we're dealing with in the Saint of Killers. Alright, so the first one, like I said, was really all about backstory, how he became the Saint. This video is going to be all about his weapons, his powers, his weaknesses, and why he's basically a force to be reckoned with, and what kind of force he is in general. Alright, so we'll start off with his weapons. So those two Colts that he has, those Colts were actually cast from the Angel of Death's sword. So when the Angel basically gave the Saint of Killers all his powers and made the Saint of Killers the new Angel of Death, he took his sword and he melted it down and he made these two awesome weapons for the Cowboy. So we have two Colts that never run out of bullets. They'll always stay fully loaded. They never miss, but even before he was given the powers, the Cowboy almost never missed. He was like an expert marksman to begin with. But given the powers of the Angel of Death, he's even a greater marksman to the point where he doesn't even need to aim. He just points and shoots, and it basically hits everything that he points at. Now, they'll probably dull down his powers somewhat for the show. They usually do when they bring comic books to live action, because usually in the comics, or any comic in general, the characters, villains, heroes, anti-heroes, whatever, are usually so overpowered that the tension is gone a lot of the times. Because everyone has so many powers, they can basically get out of any situation, or they should be able to stop anybody in any situation. So to make things a little bit more believable, when they translate these characters to live action, they usually, for the better, dull down their powers a bit. So I would count on seeing his powers, even with the guns, dull down a little bit to where he may not hit every shot, or every time he hits something, they may not die. Because that's another power of the Colts, where no matter where he hits you in the arm, you die. May not be instantaneously, but you will die. That's part of the power of the guns. I already said that they're always loaded. There's never any need to reload them. Now, they can pierce any armor. I mean, he shoots through tanks. The gun is ridiculous. And we see that in episode 1 of season 2, where, he's shooting up all those cops, and we see some of the holes in the cars looks like a tank hit them almost. We see explosions going on, and all he's doing is shooting. So this isn't really totally explained, and I doubt they'll totally explain it on the show either. But how I always took it was, it can be considered an inconsistency, and I even said in my review, I think of episode 2, that the damage the gun does, there's a lot of inconsistencies there, where it's hitting one guy, blowing his head clean off, it's hitting another guy in the shoulder, and all it looks like is a normal wound. But I think what it is because the gun has magical properties that depending on what it's shooting, depends on, I guess, the force of it, So if he's shooting at something heavily armored or metal like a car, it's going to make a big hole. If he's shooting a person, it may not make that big of a hole unless it goes through a car or a tank or a building first, if that makes any sense. That's how I took it in the books, and I think that's how they're going to go, the direction they'll go in the show, where they don't really explain it. They kind of leave it up to us to just say, well, they're magical weapons, so that's how this stuff happens, He also carries like a machete with him, a big giant knife sword looking thing. I don't believe it has any magical properties. It's one of the weapons he carried when he was an actual cowboy, and he was nice with it. Like, he's an expert swordsman too. So I'm sure we'll see him wield that quite a bit as well. And that's really it as far as his weapons go. Now, as far as his abilities go, he's basically a god. He's indestructible. I mean, I like to look at him like the Terminator. No matter what they hit him with, no matter what they do to this guy, he just keeps on coming. So, I mean, I would say he is a god. But because he's not God or, the devil, whatever, I guess I would say he is God-like. He is omnipotent, right? He's like just hella powerful, like unlimited power. He also doesn't need to eat, sleep, breathe. I mean, he is just a walking, shooting, kind of talking, not so much, killing machine. The guy is no joke, right? So he has no need for any of that stuff like breathing or anything like that. Everything else is heightened to a superhuman capacity. Strength, invulnerability, I mean, he's like Superman. I kind of said that already. Like, nothing can hurt him. He's super fast. He could teleport. Now, I don't believe he could teleport within the plane of existence he's in, but I believe he can teleport, like he can travel while he's the Saint of Killers and while he's free from his slumber, his prison or whatever. He can travel to heaven, hell, earth, and back and forth. There's no limits to where he could teleport. But I don't think, at least I don't recall him teleporting like on Earth, like, you're standing 100 yards away. I'm pretty sure he can't teleport right next to you, But he's an expert tracker, all that stuff. So, I mean, he really is the Terminator plus. The Terminator times a million, right? So that's really it for his abilities. That's really it. I mean, he can do anything except for fly, really. I mean, or shoot fire from his hands or lasers from his eyes, right? The dude is no joke, okay? All right. So, and weaknesses, as far as I know, in the comics, there are no real weaknesses. Jesse is able to use the word of God to an extent against him. It only works, like, partially, I want to say. In the show, it appears that it's not going to work at all, but I touched on this in one of my reviews as well, where I think it's going to be more of Jesse doesn't really know how to use Genesis yet, and Genesis is still a baby, growing and learning. So I think that Jesse and Genesis will grow together and learn how to use his power more effectively, and then maybe we'll see him be able to use it limitedly, but use it against the Saint of Killers. And then, I don't know if this is really a weakness, but it kind of is, because it what I'm about to say pushes the Cowboy, the Saint of Killers, off guard a lot. It brings his guard down. It changes his demeanor. And that's really anything pertaining to his past life, his family, and the things that he deemed good in his life, the only things he deemed good in his life. Or I think maybe even that time period in general where he was like a dad and he had a different outlook on life, where killing wasn't really wasn't important to him anymore. So that's a weakness in a way, because you could get him or throw him off guard or whatever. But from what I see in the books and what I remember, he can't really be harmed. So I don't want to really say there is a weakness to him. And I also don't want to say how strong he is, because I don't want to spoil anything from the comics either. But the guy is hella strong, and everybody should fear him, okay? Now, there are certain beings that he cannot kill. And I don't want to divulge who he can or can't kill. I don't think I spoiled that in the part 1. Hopefully I didn't. But I think that that's considered a spoiler for the show, because that'll probably come into play at some point. But there are things out there, beings, creatures, entities, that he cannot kill. which makes for some interesting story down the road. Now, the last thing I want to touch on is his mission on the show, which is pretty much apparent. It's pretty much clear. It's made clear from us in the finale of Season 1, as well as the start of Season 2. And the two angels, DeBlanc and Fior, go to him to basically get him to kill Jesse and Genesis. They don't want to tell him about Genesis or why, but he forces them to, basically, by killing DeBlanc. So obviously his guns can kill angels. Fior says definitively that LeBlanc is dead. LeBlanc, whatever. The little bald one is dead. But who knows? The show could mix things up, and maybe he's not dead. I don't know. But in the comics, he can kill angels with the gun. I'll say that because I don't think it's a spoiler, because they're telling us that so far, right? Now, the reason why he shoots the one angel is because one thing the Saint of Killers does not tolerate, and I won't go into it in detail because of spoilers, is disrespect. He doesn't like feeling disrespected or being disrespected. He doesn't like feeling less than what he is. And them questioning him or just not giving him the information he's requesting, to him is a sign of disrespect. So he shoots the guy in the head, right? And it kind of also leads into why he's so quick to take on the job of hunting down Jesse and Genesis. But once again, I won't get into that because that could be deemed spoilers. So, so that's it. Now he's on a mission, and then nothing is going to stop him until Jesse and Genesis are dead. So, until his mission, whatever that mission may be in his head, is complete. So that's really it on the Saint of Killers and who he is. He's a tragic figure who is going to be a major antagonist for most of, if not all, of Preacher. Don't want to tell you, exactly where that goes, but he will be a major antagonist for a while. Will he be the only antagonist? Oh, no. There will be plenty more foes for Jesse and crew to go up against. And I'll probably do some videos explaining those characters once they're introduced into the show. But I don't want to spoil any big reveals for the show because I find that it's more fun to watch this stuff unfold on TV if you're not already familiar with the source material. So, all right, yeah, that's it for this one. Definitely drop a comment down below. Let me know what you think about these two videos, what you think about the Saint of Killers in general, any information I left out, or anything you would like to add in the conversation. Definitely drop that down below. And thank you so much for watching. Always appreciate it. Be on the lookout for tons of more Preacher content, as well as a ton of other shows I do. So if you haven't checked out the channel, check it out, because there may be something else on there that interests you as well. All right, thanks again for watching. You guys have a fantastic day, and I will see you next time.